Welcome to the Word and Journey podcast, conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think, and some stories that are just for fun. We're busy people reading books in realistic increments. Follow along in the book and join in the conversation, or just sit back and enjoy. Our aim is to unpack the story and offer you things to ponder. Either way, thanks for being here. Good morning. Welcome to the Word and Journey, conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think, and sometimes make us cry, and sometimes make us want to shout, "What?"
Seriously, all this 3 episodes.
Yes, it was like one impactful, what the WTF moment after another. I'm here again with Jake Schwartz again, and
Hello.
Yes, very good to see you. And we are watching still season 1 of the Amazon Prime show Hunters. And we watched another 3 episodes and lots of stuff happened. So, yes. Let's see. Would you like to narrate? Again, you did so great last time.
Sure, I will. Note to the listener, I am a little bit ill, so I hope that I don't accidentally cough into the microphone.
Right. Also, note to the listener, we're in super spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the show and you want to watch it first, turn us off and go watch the show.
Spoilers out the wazoo.
Pretty much.
So episode 5, we open in Paraguay and we start seeing a little bit more of maybe what's going on in the South America side of this. Because we, in the first 4 episodes, we see that Biff is trying to push through this bill in Congress to lift sanctions on somewhere in South America. They just keep saying South America. So we think it's Paraguay, which is really interesting. Again, call back to some of this stuff is historical. Like, we know that Nazis escaped to a lot of places in South America. More on that later. And then we cut over to Brooklyn. We get to see a little bit of a slice of life with Roxy's family, where her husband is also an activist. And I wish I would have done a bit of research on this, but they were protesting to bring somebody out of jail. Equal rights are not a crime. Bring Huey home. And so we don't know exactly what happened. I can assume that it was something related to civil rights. This was definitely an era where the cops were just like, any protester wanting, racial equality gets arrested, even if they're being super chill, even if they're not violent. So I don't know if you had any research on what they were if they tied into a real historical figure.
I did not, but I might multitask for a second then.
Perfect. Yeah. So anyways, we see a little bit more slice of life with Roxy, some kind of strife with her husband because her husband doesn't know what she's doing. Then we cut over to Jonah training with Joe, and we see a little bit more throughout the next couple of episodes, Joe's background in the Vietnam War and how traumatic that was and some of the stuff that he saw. We get to learn a little bit more about Meyer's life in the camp, really a lot of torture by the wolf, seemingly because of his relationship with Ruth. Remember the last couple of episodes, Ruth basically turned the wolf's advances down and the wolf got really ticked off. Here we have an interesting scene again where Meyer had the chance to kill the wolf, and he says that something stopped him and he regrets not killing the wolf. And so that kind of leads to potentially a lot of the backstory of why the hunters are. Then we see them go after another couple of secret Nazis. We have Tilda, the German propagandist, and Lieutenant of the Ghost, who is also a scientist. Sorry, scrolling through all of my notes. Sometimes I take super dense notes and then they don't end up being very helpful.
That's
because I'm trying to talk through them.
That's okay. I've done that too. Or sometimes done the opposite where I'm like, I'll take a brief note because I'll remember everything that came with that. And then I remember only a little bit. I did though. So I literally looked up very quickly. So Huey P. Newton, lived 1942 to 1989. Wikipedia says was an African-American revolutionary notable as founder of the Black Panther Party. So possibly,
Gotcha.
If that's what they're referencing, then that would make quite a bit of sense.
That would make a lot of sense.
Quite a bit of sense.
I love how much history this show pulls in, and it's weird because I'm not super up to date on my on 1900s history, and so there's some of it that I'm like, wait, that actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Like there and like I'm a little bit familiar with like World War One, World War Two, a little bit like the Holocaust, just because it's super fascinating and super covered. But like all of the stuff after that, like in between like World War Two and like the sexual revolution, is a little bit of this like black hole from my sense of history, and which apparently like a lot of things happen there. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was nuts. It was a nuts time for sure. Where did I stop? Oh, yes, that's right. So they're going after these two Nazis. One of them, Tilda, is in Westchester. One of them, the Ghost's lieutenant, is in Huntsville, Alabama. So they go after her. They basically kill Tilda. There's a lot of drama surrounding that. Basically, Meyer doesn't truly identify her before killing her off. She says some like really sneaky sort of stuff that gets Meyer to kill her before the others maybe find out something about him. We don't know. And then in Huntsville, they find the other Nazi, the lieutenant, and he starts like giving off names of other Nazis in the States and their aliases. And there's one guy that makes Harriet, Sister Harriet, kind of go quiet, and she basically just kills him instead of waiting for everything else. Well, she has Jonah and Joe kill him. But anyway, so she goes out and like starts hunting around this big party that the Ghost's lieutenant was throwing for other Nazis. She kills one, and then she finds this other guy, Moritz Eilich, something like that. And she ends up escaping with him, like at least seems to be acting like she's in league with him, all these sorts of things. So we think by this point that she's an absolute traitor.
or literally Harriet the spy.
Yeah. Let's see. Episode 6, we see that Roxy... Oh, sorry. I also left out something important from episode 5. Episode 5 ends with Meyer's car exploding and almost killing Meyer, Roxy, and Lonnie. They escape, but Roxy is out. Like she's out of the hunters. She goes home to stay with her kids. Episode 6, we see
other fun detail, because here's something I remember. So that blowout, the shootout, it was Travis. It was the
yes.
Nazi cleaner, and we find that he also like took out some of his own compatriots. Like two of his colleagues are dead in his trunk because they like tried to make him be the messenger boy, and he didn't like that. And so he is still doing his original dirty work, but also now like playing his own side as well. And we'll see where that goes, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And he manages to blame it on the hunters. There are so many plot lines going on in this. It is nuts. It is really good. Listener, I hope that you have already watched the show before listening to us, but go watch the show if you haven't, because it's amazing. So episode 6, we see Sister Harriet driving Moritz. There's dialogue that indicates that she's in league with him, and eventually we find out maybe she's not, because they basically break down on the road, and he's like kind of asking her questions, those sorts of cheeky questions about people that don't exist, and he tries to take her out with a tire iron. Doesn't end up working. She stuffs him into her trunk and then drives off. So we don't know what's going on by that point. In the meantime, there is a wedding that is being planned, and it is Mindy and Murray's daughter, Amy. So we see a lot of this going on. At the same time, we see a little bit more about what's going on with Biff in the president's cabinet. And Biff gives this propaganda speech coming back, just like dripping with American platitudes. And just, oh God, it makes you feel icky all over, just the way he's talking and trying to get the sanctions. Basically, the whole thing is to get the sanctions lifted. And it's just clear as day, but it's just so nasty. And of course, he's leaning on his dead family, the one that he murdered, but nobody knows that. And so then we get a little bit more of Harriet's background as well. And we see that she escaped Germany, I think in 1939. And still don't know exactly what's going on, but we do see her father hand her what I think is a mezuzah, which is, I might get this very wrong. I believe it is something that in Jewish tradition, you hang up next to your door. It has a piece of scripture inside of it, and you're supposed to hang these up at just about every door in your house. And so her dad hands her this, and she escapes on the train. And then she we see her kind of walking down into a convent for an underground meal and realize that she was forcibly baptized into the church. She's supposed to be using her baptismal name, which is Harriet. Her original name is Rebecca. And then we get cut back to Baltimore. Joe visits his friend Eric in an institution. His friend Eric is nonverbal, definitely signs of like PTSD. And at first, it seems like Eric was also went to Vietnam. We find out later that he was not. He was actually sent to a place called Edgemoor and experimented on. This again has callbacks, and I wouldn't be surprised if something akin to this actually happened during the Vietnam War. I do know of a lot of other stuff that's very similar, like the Tuskegee experiments. Like people, especially Black people, were just experimented on in the United States. Like we like to think that it was only the Germans. We kind of did it too. Again, a huge topic. And so we find out that this again is a Nazi scientist who escaped to the U.S. During and started experimenting on soldiers with the blessing of the U.S. government in the Vietnam War era. And so they're going after this guy, and it turns out, I believe, to be the name is Timothy Randall, and I forgot what his alias is. Dang it!
Is that the wolf? Sorry, that's not the wolf. That's the ghost. I think
I'm also trying to like go off the cuff, and so I might be getting a little bit of the episodes mixed up, and so I do very much apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, I mean, in this medium, I mean, especially like when we binge it, like it all kind of like blends together yes. Anyway. So, I mean, I've been like, because I'm freakishly busy. I've been like pecking away like bits at a time. Last night was odd because I watched the whole episode all at once, but most of the time we watch multiple episodes at a time, so it's okay.
So anyways, they also cut back to the hunters at this point have realized that somebody knows about them, and so their hideout in Meyer's house probably isn't safe, so they're meeting actually in Mindy and Murray's condo, and we also see that Lonnie stole a red book. Let me see again. I lost my place in my notes. Dang it. This is so annoying. And so we get to see like, they're starting to put some of these pieces together, and this book becomes really important later on. This episode, we actually also get to see the wedding. Like there was a lot of questions about, should we have the wedding? Should we not? And Murray really pushes to have it because they need to celebrate the joy in these circumstances. And there's this beautiful wedding, and we cut back to some flashbacks of Murray and Mindy in the war, and we see that the Nazis killed their son after he was trying to protect them. It's very tragic, very interspaced with this wedding. It's very beautiful. I cried. Just an absolutely amazing episode. Also, during all of this, yet another plot line. Agent Morris is trying to get more information out of that source that we saw earlier that did a couple of puff pieces about Meyer. And we end up seeing her get beat up in the bathroom as she's like trying to meet with this guy, and told like, hey, don't look into this. We have knives everywhere. And they drop like a photo of her girlfriend on the ground. So Agent Morris, to save her girlfriend, ends up breaking up with her, won't tell her why. It's another very tragic scene. And then at the very end of this episode, we see his sister Harriet show back up at the wedding, and she has Moritz in her trunk. And we find out that Moritz was the Nazi who killed Mindy and Murray's son.
So he becomes her wedding present.
Mm-hmm. And at the very end of this episode, we see Travis, the cleaner, and Tobias, the colonel's son, maybe this
son, paramour, something.
Yeah,
something icky.
That sort of like younger Aryan. They break into Meyer's house, and they don't have a lot of time. They find the library and they light it on fire. Getting into episode 7 is where everything starts to really pick up. We see that Meyer hides the fire from the crew, so that he doesn't let them know that the library was lit on fire. He does find out about it, though. In DC, we see that Jimmy Carter, president, lists the sanctions on South America, and there's another senator who tries taking Biff down. In the the name that I was wondering about earlier was the Ghost, because in the Department of Veterans Affairs, we see Joe, who was actually in the Vietnam War, and Lonnie, who was an actor, sneak into this sort of group therapy session for Vietnam vets. And Lonnie does this horrible, like, it was so cringy, like trying to be one of the guys so that Joe could sneak into the records room, and everybody was right through it. Joe ends up sharing more of his story, and it's just, again, this horrible, horrible, tragic thing that happened to him in the Vietnam War, and Lonnie's able to sneak into the records room and get the information on the Ghost. In DC, we see that Morris tries taking the case that's now been kind of wide open. Like, she realizes that there are thousands of Nazis in the United States that we actually brought over, because if we didn't, the Russians would. And her boss actually seems to believe her and is trying to run it up the chain, but she's taken off the case. Let's see. Back in Brooklyn, Jonah cracks the code that they found, I think, in episode 3 or 4, at the radio transmission using a music box. And basically it has to do with, it was really cool. It has to do with time signatures, and it was a 3/4 and a 4/4, and they kind of mixed up the notes, I think. And wherever the notes matched up is where you would take a look at the cipher, and you'd be able to see what was there. And it was a set of coordinates. Music theory is awesome. And that would be partly, that has something to do with the concept of hemiola, where you have you're in one time signature, let's say 4/4, but you make it feel like another time signature, like 3/4. Triplets are a type of hemiola, for example. I won't go further into that. I just really like music theory.
That's a new word for me, and I didn't know that you could do that with time signatures. But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if it's just like math and patterns, and the notes, right? But it was fun, because it's been a few episodes since we've seen Jonah really do like his code breaking stuff, and that's like his superpower. So it was nice to see that coming out again.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so Agent Morris ends up getting a warrant to search Meyer's place. And then we also see her arrest Meyer. At this point, Mindy and Murray still don't know what to do with Moritz. He's chained up in their basement. We see a lot of cuts of like imagining killing him, but then him like saying something that's really tragic. They still don't do it. And we also find out that Nazis are going to release some sort of weapon. We think it's a bioweapon at a power plant. At this point, the crew splits up, one going to Grand Central, chasing down some stuff, and one going to the power plant. And basically, it's all happening at the same time. I'll explain one line first and then the other line. Grand Central Station, Jonah spots Travis heading into a subway. This is the cleaner. Jonah knows that Travis killed Booty Hole, which was like one of my favorite characters.
Very best friend.
Yeah, it was so sad. Travis ends up dropping a bag in the subway. Lonnie is able to chase after him, but the Jonah, and by this point, Murray is with Jonah, can't get off the train in time. They realize that he dropped a bomb, and Murray tries defusing the bomb. He knows he can't. He sends Jonah to bring all of the crew, or all of the people on the subway, to the back of the subway. And he's trying to defuse it. And then we see like the last scene in this area that Meyer fails at defusing it and explodes. And I was like, again, almost in tear. Murray. It's really bad. Murray's one of my favorite characters. And I wrote in my notes, Murray's dead. Damn it.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of this, like Lonnie catches up with Travis, and Travis sees him and stabs him, and pretty sure he's dead too. So I'm like, 2 of my favorite characters are dead. This is very sad. At the same time, all this is going on, the other half of the crew, so this is going to be Mindy, Joe, and Sister Harriet, are at the power plant. They see the Ghost's wife, Una. She tries attacking Joe. They're able to take her down. And she like spits off this last line before Harriet kills her: "You will never stop father's work." So there's either there's another character on the line, or I've misplaced a lot of my German history again. And Sister Harriet kills her. And then right as she does, basically the whole power plant blows up and takes out all of the city's power. At this point, Agent Morris is interviewing Meyer during all of this, and she lets him know about Operation Paperclip. They clearly know something of what's going on. She tries maybe getting in to give her some more info. Meyer warns her about what's going on that night. She doesn't believe him, and then the power goes out. And so we're left at this kind of really big event. We don't know if one of these characters is dead, the other one is dead. Like, it's huge. And I also forgot to mention that they found the ghost, and he was in on life support and all these sorts of things. Like, there is so much going on in these 3 episodes.
There's a lot.
I did not do them justice.
No, but you covered a lot. Those are like a lot of the main high points. And then we were talking about how we kind of without planning just landed on like a really perfect like cliffhanger sort of moment. There's like 3 episodes left from here that are probably going to be like super, super watch them all at once, high action.
Yeah.
Like the way this one ended, like there's this pan shot. And we've seen shots like this before of like seeing New York City over the Statue of Liberty, like, and it's just this like pan shot across the city as like this rolling back out as like the city's going dark in the middle of the night. And then it has this very X-Men feel to it, of just like the city going out. And then, yes, it's chaos. All of the people on the street level, just like a lot of screaming, and people are confused. And yes, we don't know who's dead or alive.
Except for Murray. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
I'm pretty sure he's dead.
If they pull a soap opera and he's like, but I was only faking to be dead at the end, I will be very happy.
Yeah. I don't know that I think I would be kind of mad about that, because he's one of my favorite characters too. And so it's shocking to see him like get blown up. But in a sense, like it kind of, it's a well-written death.
It is. And like from the beginning, these are a wonderful husband and wife, like constant jibes at each other, but really love each other. And you just know that there's something tragic that's going to happen to them.
Pretty much. Yeah. I wasn't expecting, I would guess probably Lonnie's not quite dead, because that'd be a lot. But that would be a lot to kill off two characters at once. But even so, though, like from a writing perspective, it does something to the story when nobody's safe.
Yeah,
and this was a thing in Lost as well that I really appreciated. Like from like season 1 when Boone dies, like you kind of get the sense right away. Okay, this is one of those shows where like we're going to make you fall in love with characters, and then we're going to take them away. We're going to break your heart, and you're going to thank us for it, because there's just like it's the drama cycle, and there's something addictive about that. And so there's something, it's a little tragic and sad, but it was a good death. I wouldn't undo it, because I think that would cheapen it, even though I'll miss him so much. Yeah, so thanks for that narration. There's lots of stuff going on a plot level, and then I would say a lot going on a thematic level also.
Mm-hmm.
One of the themes, I'll just run through themes and catch thoughts on this. One of the themes has to do with initiation, and we could say maybe this is like a happier sort of one. And we get to kind of experience initiation through the Jonah character. He's written as this 19-year-old troubled kid who has been very disconnected from things. When we first meet him, he's pretty much just like this kid. He watches movies, he looks at porn, he plays video games, he kind of works like a dead-end job, just, hangs out, whatever. And then he's now being inducted into adulthood and into all of these groups. And so there's this sense where the team still doesn't fully trust him. I mean, for sure, Joe is kind of the most overtly, you're just a kid, you don't belong here. But you start seeing, as Jonah now starts going through the paces. You mentioned Agent Morris having to break up with her girlfriend to protect her. And Jonah has to do something similar as well, because he has this girl that he likes. And there's a scene where he tells her off. Again, not a lot of explanation, but just in this like cold-hearted sort of way. But then like right after she leaves, he's like, I don't know, it's a really well acted scene. He's just like watching her go out the door, just like heartbroken in his eyes. And like there's this really touching moment with him and Sister Harriet where she's able to really validate, like, this is really hard. It gets harder.
That was a nice like turning point in the whole like, yeah, but it gets easier. No, she's like, it gets way harder. Like it was a nice. Again, this is such a well written show, and it doesn't lead into a lot of the platitudes and stuff that you would expect from another show like this.
Yeah. So there's a sense where he has now done a really hard thing and has gained some respect and some membership. And then you do watch him start to do some physical training. Joe is teaching him how to grapple, teaching him how to shoot. And now he is starting to go along with the guys, and he's not doing it perfectly. He botches some things here and there, but also he cracks the code. And so there's a sense of through pain, for sure. A little bit like it's a little bit initiation through violence in the I'm learning how to shoot and grapple and do these hard things and becoming part of the crew in that way. There's a little bit of that. On a really beautiful end of that, though, it was the wedding, and I loved everything about the wedding scene. I was nervous for a little bit because they were showing Travis and Tobias kind of like scoping it out, and I was nervous thinking they were going to like blow it up or shoot it out or something, and that would have been like really. I mean, it would have fit with the story, but it'd been really sad. But they didn't. Yeah. So they got to have their beautiful wedding moment, and that was nice. It was really neat seeing Jonah now having to read a prayer in Hebrew in this community that he's been really disconnected from. And then later doing the dances with them. And he talks about now I know what my Safta wanted me to feel, this feeling of tribe, of these are my people. And it was this really beautiful moment of I've found connection and I've, in a sense, like become more myself through becoming more a part of this people, which felt really important. Like Maya and Murray were both talking about how the wedding needs to happen. And I would agree. It's like it's something beautiful, something ritual, a beautiful ritual, a beautiful communal ritual together. We need things like this to remind us who we are and why we are, and to balance out all of the darkness and everything. What are some of your thoughts about ritual and tribe and community?
Oh, I think we're pretty in line with this. So we find tribes in a lot of places, I think, religiously and culturally are some of the really big ones. But I find, a little bit of it in my work. We, before we started recording, I got the chance to talk about the conference that I did. We just had like a really short one in the Seattle area for all of the people that do development work at my company. And I've been, growing a little bit more of my tribe here at work, and we between my team and cross team sort of stuff, and like we get to do fun stuff, and it's in the midst of hard work, but like building those connections, and they're people that I can rely on. Like this isn't just like a corporate networking thing. I've been able to find the people that I rely on kind of in life through a lot of my jobs. And that sense of belonging can really anchor you. Let's be honest. A lot of the corporate work that we do, certainly as developers, but in other arenas as well, like it can be rough. It can suck, and having your tribe can really anchor you. And finding, like we talked about in the wedding, finding joy in the midst of a lot of tragedy. Like it can be a reprieve. I remember being up in Spokane when my dad passed. Like it was this very sudden, tragic sort of deal, and I was working through it. But I had the chance to just go out with friends and have fun. It wasn't like I wasn't grieving and dealing with that process at the same time. But it's a reminder that life still goes on, and that can be really comforting.
Yeah, there's a lot of comfort and security in having people. I mean, especially in moments of suffering, of pain, of tragedy, to have people like that. I'm also thinking just kind of what's being drawn out in the show is, there's the tribe of like the Jewish community at large. And Jonah's beginning to discover that, as well as like the micro community of here's the hunters. But he also, in a sense, I mean, you see that on the other end too, with this Fourth Reich, with these Nazis. They are a tribe with each other as well, and you get to see the dark side of the power of tribe in a sense too. Of basically, what you see is people who are unified around a common belief, and I think that's one of the things that makes it like a tribe or a really strong community versus just versus just like like some affinity group or some people who
Mhm.
like, it's not just, oh, we happen to all have the same skin color or we happen to all like work the same job. I mean, kind of like there can be, I think that there can be tribes that are built on, we have a shared experience, but when it can also be built on, and we have a shared point of focus, and that could be, we believe in the same God, or we believe in the same mission, or we're trying to build the same empire on earth, or we're trying to promote the same product. When there's a shared purpose and there's a shared point of focus, and the shared sense of ritual, when we're all,
Mhm.
and I guess, I mean, we see this in the hunters a little bit. There's a sense of sacrifice there too. Like they are all sacrificing things important to them for the sake of this shared common purpose and goal, and all suffering together. And so like, and you throw in like a ritual, like the ritual. There's a ritual component to how they interrogate and verify the identity of one of the Nazis and kill them. And
Yeah.
there's this wedding is like all ritual, and so all of that. These are really powerful community elements. I mean, so we could say, thinking, how do we live? I mean, we need people. And I would say, I think a lot of people are looking for community, looking for friends, may get caught up on the, like, I want somebody with like a lot of shared interests, or I want somebody that makes me feel the feels, or we had good sex or whatever. But having a shared sense of ritual or a shared point of focus might end up being like in the end, like more powerfully connective, more sustainably connective than just we have fun together.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about, the idea of ritual there. It seems, the idea of just, we have fun together. Yeah, that we all know that fades for the most part. Or it doesn't necessarily fade, but it certainly does change. But the idea of like having a common ritual and that being sort of an anchor point in certainly romantic relationships, that's a new one for me. That's intriguing.
Mm. Actually, the other thing I was thinking too is comparing this wedding in the show, as it's depicted, compared to like my Filipino family, whom I love, and I absolutely love and adore them. But we have some shared customs, and we have big parties, and like we have a lot of fun together. But there's not a cohesive sense of focus. Like we're not all quite the same religion, variations of Christian, but like not all the same there. Like we're very different politically. We're very different, like economically. And we're not like all working toward the same thing. So when we get together, it's very much like, hey, we're having fun, singing fun songs, recalling fun memories, like, right, like still currently kind of united around the focal point of like, we all like completely adore and revere Lola Jessie. and I mean, and before that, it was like Lola Jessie and her husband Lola June, memory eternal. But yeah, there's also, but because of that, there's a sense of we're not quite tribe anymore, because we're just too scattered, and there's not really any strong unifying force that binds us together. So it makes intimacy hard in that sort of setting, even though there's a lot of fondness.
Yeah. Yeah. Distance can definitely do that. I feel that even with my family, like not necessarily in a truly bad way. It just is. It's, my dad's side of the family all lives kind of somewhere in the inland Northwest, but we just don't see each other all that often. Like, our family's not super tight. And you can kind of feel like we have a lack of intimacy that many other families have. Combine that, or turn that with like my direct family members, of course, like it's a lot more. So it's definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, I mean, you can contrast that with, certainly there's this concept of chosen family, which, a lot of people develop in adulthood. They connect with a different group of people, may or may not be biological family, but it's people who are bound more by affinity, more by values, common interests.
Mm-hmm.
And within there, I would say too, kind of a very significant, maybe, I mean, we might be able to call this a subset of it, but one spiritual family. And again,
Yeah.
and I'm speaking at this from an Orthodox perspective, where, our tradition has a lot of ritual, has a lot of tradition. As in any religion, there's all kind of a built-in shared point of focus, shared creed, kind of. I mean, Christianity, especially Protestantism, like the spectrum of like what do we actually believe is quite broad.
Pretty wide.
And so finding a shared point of focus in there takes some work. With an Orthodoxy, it's a little bit more organized. but I do have the sense when I go to liturgy, I'm not quite as emotionally intimate with all of these people. Like I don't know them all as
Mhm.
well. We don't converse on the same levels, but we practice the same rituals. We partake of the same sacraments. We do the same ascetic labors. And so there's a sense, even though like I don't know everything about this person or that person, and we don't like talk about all of like the thoughts and feelings, like there's a sense of like we are very family, like almost more than my other family, because of all of the really important things, all of the things that we share that are really important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I have similar experiences, both within the church and without. Like my best friend and his wife and I, aside from following basically the same tenets of faith, like we've never really gone to church together. We don't attend the same services. I don't attend service at all right now, but that's a different story for a different time. But we have this ritual, right? Of like every week, we usually it's Thursdays, we get together and we have dinner together, and then we watch an episode of whatever new series is streaming. Right now, we're in Obi-Wan, and I'm so excited because I really love the series, and I'm really behind, so don't spoil anything for me. We haven't, due to like life circumstances, we haven't had the chance to meet for a couple of weeks. Hopefully, this cold goes away so that we can meet this week. Be really nice. I'm very, very intimate with them, not in the biblical sense, than as opposed to a lot of my family, and I would say even my more immediate family in some aspects. We participate in a lot of the same sorts of rituals together, religious or not. But also we see a lot of interpersonal sacrifice as well. Like we sacrifice our times. We're always ready to take care of any one of our needs. I am their last minute babysitter often, mostly because like Walter, their 1.5-year-old now, is my first sort of, well, he's my nephew effectively, but he's also like the first child in my life that I am actively around at that age and like being asked to take care of. So like, oh my God, I'm going to break your child. He is not broken yet. And I've changed a diaper.
Well done.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's been cool.
You've taken your first step into a newer, larger world.
Oh God. It was kind of funny. I was again, last minute babysitter, and their neighbor, I think had just had her kid or like was ready to pop. I forget. It was within that time frame. And she said, yeah, I just can't watch him for the whole time, but I'll be right across they live in a duplex. Just call me and call me when you're going to change the diaper. I'll walk you through it, all these sorts of things. And so like I text her, I'm like, hey, he's a real stinky. Like this is nasty. And she said, okay, I'll be right over. And it's like 10 minutes and something was going on. She just wasn't able to get over. And so like, I don't want to let my nephew sit in his own filth. And so I did it by myself. I managed to do a pretty good job at it. I think I got all the pieces done and I managed to not touch the poop. So win-win.
Well done. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I remember there was a point when I had my first child and I had never like been around like infants or very much or diapers at all either. And I came to this point where I was like, well, I'm going to be working with poop. I need to just be okay with this. And so there's like this very like conscious like silencing of like a disgusted part and be like, well, we're just going to get through this. We'll wash our hands really, really well afterwards. But anyway, that's super cool. I'm glad. I'm glad when people get to be around little kids. There's something really healthy and enlivening around taking care of vulnerable and sweet, unburdened people. And I think we all need a little bit of that. Okay, I'm gonna switch those themes because there's cool stuff. So within, and I would say the other really, really major theme coming up in Hunters. Okay, it's not why do we need to watch history and know our history, although that came up as we were wondering like what happened between like the 40s and the 60s. Some other time we should rant on why we need to read history. Well, I mean, we kind of covered that a bunch through 1984, a lot.
Oh yeah, and I think through the first episode on Hunters a little bit too.
A little bit too, yeah.
Like we, as far as like the surprise at like, oh yeah, we really did actually.
Yeah.
Nazis over.
We did, Liam. So the other major theme though has to do. We started talking about like what's the difference between vengeance versus justice, and I mean, and this is coming out all over the place as they're like hunting these people down. Kind of a subset of that is like, what is the true? What is the good? which comes out in some really brilliant ways in the conversations between Meyer and Agent Morris, as Agent Morris is trying to be a very upstanding FBI agent and trying to do what is right, do what is moral, go with conscience. Murray or Meyer and company, they're very much like, what is effective? What will get the job done? How will justice be done? And we could ask these questions about what is the difference between vengeance and justice? When does force turn into violence? I think it's Sister Harriet who asks at some point, she and Meyer are talking about following a code. Meyer is like, we have a code. And she says, really, Meyer? Or is that just something we tell ourselves so we believe we're not like the monsters we hunt? And then he retorts, well, perhaps we're monsters, but not like them. We have an excuse. War created us. I mean, he says it in a better accent. It does seem, though, like it gets complicated when you're doing this eye for an eye sort of justice, but the first person taking an eye is this monster and not your neighbor. Like, if you're going to participate in that and match that, you kind of have to become monstrous yourself. And that feels like the question that's getting explored is, here's these Nazi hunters who, kind of as a collective human society, we've kind of like decided, yeah, we're going to scapegoat the Nazi party and just, automatic villain and no questions asked. And it's in that sense, there's kind of this implied, so anybody who's like going after the Nazis, like, gets carte blanche, they can do whatever, and we're not going to question them because it's the Nazis, unless you're Agent Morris and hunting the Nazi hunters.
Right, but she's also kind of hunting the Nazis. Like, this is almost, well, I mean, I guess not almost, definitely a third party or fourth or a fifth. God, there are so many plot lines. But of like, she seems to be taking this middle ground approach of like, justice still needs to happen, and there is a process, there is a due process for all of these sorts of things. So there is some of that, but you're right. Like, where is the question around, is violent, or excuse me, revenge versus justice? And these Nazis and all of these Nazis that they've killed in the show so far, and all these ones that they're going after, were horrible, did experiments on people. One of them that they killed in episode 6 used to experiment on Jews with salt water, because pilots would go like get shot down and then drown. They didn't die from getting shot down, they died from drowning in the water. He would just fill them up with salt water and like force it down their throats and stuff. Like, that is a horrible, awful way to die. Like, and that's one of the lighter things that we hear about in the show. So like, what is that? How far does that carte blanche extend? Should it extend at all? Like, these are interesting questions, especially in light of situation. Like, I tend to be much more on the pacifistic side myself, but like, in a society where the governing power, which is also effectively the judiciary power, there's a lot of nuance there, even in current day politics. We don't need to get into that right now. Is harboring these people and is actively allowing them to continue a lot of their experiments. What do you do? Do you have that carte blanche?
It's tricky. I think, yeah, it brings up this question of can we trust our authorities to bring about justice? And in that sense, so I guess defining justice becomes an important thing, because if we're defining justice as like everybody gets a fair share or fair consequence, well, that gets tricky to define and really difficult to enact anyway, because not everybody's in the same situation. So like, equality, equity, like all of that becomes in. If we think about justice as just like rightly ordering everything, rightly ordering the world, putting people in right relationship with each other, right relationship with themselves, rightly with the world, I would say that's more of a healing move. Then there could be some consequence kind of embedded in there, but the effect would be different. With something like Hunter show justice, there's a sense of we're not trying to heal anything, we're trying to destroy. Or there's nothing that can be healed. We're just giving it consequences, and that's, I know I'm reading that as more on the vengeance side than the justice side, because it is illegal, it is unsanctioned, it is. I mean, they have a code as long as it's convenient for them, but it's very unregulated. Different than different than it might be if there is a sense of like, can we, like what there's in current day politics, in some of the conversations between white people and BIPOC people or African American people, there are more conversations around can reparations be done? What would that look like? And I mean, super complex thing. Who knows what will happen? But it is a concept that's been entertained at least a little bit. The sense of maybe something could be healed, maybe something could be repaired, maybe something could be integrated, maybe. That might be leaning more the direction of justice. Hopefully, it's not like Black people want to kill all the white people because white people enslave them. That would be more on the vengeance end of things. I think. I mean, as you're talking about like. I know as we're talking about like, do we trust like the authority in the government to like bring about a rightness? That makes it interesting for us as Christians, I think, to look at that, because I mean, there's a very worldview specific thing, but we do believe in the Lord God as the final arbiter of justice, and whatever our eschatology ends up being, and that's an interesting rabbit trail.
Which we kind of talked about a couple of books ago.
Yeah. But there is a sense of I can trust something higher than me to eventually rightly order everything in some ultimate sense. And I would say that's a tenet of faith, which one could believe or disbelieve, but it's there. But that's not something that necessarily exists outside of a faith tradition or outside of a belief in a higher power. So I guess that's where some people find themselves.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, especially, actions have consequences. Inaction has consequences. What if, doing everything the quote unquote right way still leads to, horrible deaths or horrible torture, horrible circumstances, and your not doing the right thing could stop those. What in that case is the right thing? Is following the path of justice that's laid out in due process and all these sorts of things the appropriate step, or is, going after these bastards yourself the correct step? Like, it's really easy to stand on high, lofty ideals. And we actually, sorry, I'm just getting a flashback to, I was effectively making the same types of arguments for my work, but not nearly as drastic as what the show is. But it's easy to stand on really high, lofty ideals. It's very difficult to implement them. To cut back over to the work argument, we're talking a lot around something called automated testing. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's a lot of literature on it, but it's like, so much of it is high, lofty ideals. I'm like, I'm here in the mud. Like, there's already a bunch of stuff here. I'm not writing new stuff. So, like, all of these lofty ideals, awesome. How are we actually going to do this sort of stuff? Anyways, sorry, total random side tangent.
Yeah, no, that makes sense though. I mean, you're talking about being in like the engineering muck, but pertinent to the show we're watching and thinking about. I mean, here's these folks who went through the concentration camps, like the muck of all time. But I think we hear stories. I mean, again, like you hear like the range of. I mean, here's these people coming out. They're just like completely devastated, broken, like consumed by anger. Versus someone like, I think we mentioned, Corrie ten Boom, who came out forgiving her captors. And there's something about identity that gets brought in here too, where there's a sense of I could do what's effective or what feels fair or what feels good to survive, or I could just be focused on surviving, gaining power, gaining some sort of safety, stability, or if my focus is different, if my focus can transcend just my physical body, just this physical world, to a higher ideal, like character development, virtue, spiritual growth, holiness. If one has a strong sense of there's something more than just this moment that I can fall back on or seek and pursue, there's something transformative about that. And I think, in the show, Sister Harry's question about like, are we just monsters like them is a really pertinent one. And it's this almost throwaway little moment because they don't spend a lot of time there. But that almost seems to capture like the central conflicts of the show is like, okay, so here's these Nazi hunters. Like, are they monsters? I mean, there's certainly like ghosts in the shadows doing things like that. But they're
and actively saving people. Like these, it's one thing, and I think we get into somewhat dangerous, almost judgmental territory with some, not necessarily on a show. Like fiction is one thing, like nonfiction, like stuff that actually happened can be very different. But like when judging the actions necessarily of another person is like, sorry, jumbled trains. Anyways, show like most of the Nazis that we have seen killed have been actively plotting something. We have a couple of them that are like on the fringes and apparently have been abandoned by the Fourth Reich as being useless or whatever. But like these folks are actively plotting to murder a whole bunch of people and to bring the Reich back. And so like there is that interesting, again, like where theory meets application. It's tough. And it's messy. Like none of the options, either letting go and moving on versus like, the other extreme of killing these people, none of them are nice and clean. And I think we all, like humanity as a whole, really seeks that nice, clean feeling. It's in real life, it's not there. And I'm really glad that they're kind of showing that in this show too.
It would be nice. It would be nice to say, you're a monster, you're not. And you're a monster and I'm not. And so I'm good and you're not. Like you talked about that moral high ground. It would be nice to be able to just like cleanly stay there. And yeah, I mean, this show certainly depicts what this real life reality that no, nobody is complete monster, even the monster seeming people. Nobody's complete not monster. In the certainly in the internal family systems framework that I'm kind of steeped in. I mean, we talk a lot about people exercising, people working from their burden parts. Maybe they're really severely burdened parts. But there is a sense of, okay, so even, and we could say even someone like a Nazi monster, a lot of burden parts, a lot of horrific, inexcusable actions. And yet there's still a human in there. There's still an image of God somewhere beneath the atrocities that could be reclaimed given sufficient labor, a whole bunch of stuff. Do we have the patience? Do we have the space to try to seek that out? Or are our burden parts, our parts that have been wounded and hurt, feeling just like more powerful and be like, no, like we need to have a parts war? And I think I'm at this point, I would agree with you when you say like, yeah, we can't. I mean, especially like you and me, white guys living like way after the fact. I mean, for us to look back and say what should or shouldn't have happened to like the Nazis back then, I mean, we can't say that. That's for sure in real life because it's not our situation. We can though, I think, for sure look to like our own lives and our own time and say like, well, what kind of people are we? And what I'm leaning at is there's a strong temptation to take retributive action because it feels good.
It's English, we can make it.
Yeah, but there's this transformational aspect to it too. Like you kind of talk about like you become like what you worship. I almost want to say like you become like what you hunt and kill as well. And so why it matters what we do is, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to do this eye for an eye sort of thing, I have to become like the person that hurt me to hurt them back. And so I change in that. If I want to be better or be different than that person, then I can't do the same things, or I can't approach the problem in the same way. I have to step into different mentality, different way of life, different value set, which might mean I don't get the adrenaline rush or immediate satisfaction of saying, hey, like I had this moment of power, this moment of like felt vindication when I punished this person for, stuff that again is inexcusably wrong and absolutely a real thing. And we don't at all want to minimize one's experience, but I don't know. I can feel like to like brutally torture and kill like a Nazi, we could say that that's fair, but it's not good. Mm-hmm. And if we're seeking the good, we might need different methods.
Yeah, and that's also like a really important thing is like, we talked about preempting or stopping, horrible atrocity, right? And the only option might be the death of an individual. which is its huge and weighty thing in and of itself and really tricky philosophically. But like there's death and then there's torture and death.
Yep. There's torture and death, which is different. Yeah, because there's, and this might be, I guess, I mean, everything about like capital punishment is really complex, and I don't actually want to make this about capital punishment, but there's kind of this sense where something like that, or like a ritual death, could be clean. It could be done cleanly, kind of impassively, without emotion, done by a designated person who's like that. That's what they're meant to do. Different than we're relishing the pain, we're enjoying the torture, we're celebrating like the suffering of somebody. Like that's just like a whole different experience. And not I would say definitely not healing. It might not even actually be justice. It's just like revenge. And that's just, again, we're devolving into the level of brutality that we experience. And so again, that's not a move done from like this compassionate, wise mind place of holiness, as much as like, I've been hurt, I am yearning for some sort of resolution, witnessing discharge of energy. And so revenge presents a nice, clean option. Yeah.
It's tough.
It's very tough. Makes for a wonderful story. Yeah, but it's good. I am appreciating very much how the story is bringing it out, because it is very complex. I mean, none of the characters are coming out perfectly clean, which is awesome. And I do so love the multiple plot lines. That's just,
oh my gosh,
one of my favorite things. And
it's so hard to synopsize, but dang, is it so good?
Yeah. I'm really enjoying it. Like, and yes, these characters, like they're funny, they're witty, they're wise, they're sarcastic. Their chemistry just feels really well executed, well performed, and the character moments are really good. I'm appreciating the way that they're weaving in the flashbacks as not overwhelmingly there, because they're short little snippets and just kind of like interspersed here and there, but the little tiny snippets just to give a sense of, hey, here was a really formative moment for this person that explains something about their character. Really well done. Yeah, these couple moments where like you talked about in Sister Harriet's backstory, when her father is like sending her away, and then, oh my gosh, like, like Murray, when he's like this young dad, like just like clinging to a son. I'm like, I mean, I cling to my kid that way. It'll be like so terrible. I don't know. I can't imagine how I would live after that sort of thing. And just so, yes, my empathy has a functional limit there. But yeah, there's some powerful moments. And now all of New York's in blackout. So
very excited for the last 3 episodes, and they're going to leave us on a massive cliffhanger, I'm sure.
Right.
Because there is a second season. I think it's filming now.
Okay. I certainly hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I'm anticipating being very angry. However.
Absolutely.
So, but yes, hopefully it will come back. And then we'll just have to consume yet more media. That'll be fun. Well, we will leave you all there with some themes of community and tribalism and justice and vengeance and things like that. Go hug your families.
Please.
That will be an essential thing too. And send us money, because we need that. Anyway, we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye. Journey is a podcast by Moses Bernabe. If you like what you hear, consider supporting the show with dollars, reviews, or shares, or all of the above. Word and Journey can be found on most major podcast platforms and on my author Patreon at patreon.com/Moses Bernabe. Moses Bernabe can be found at mosesbernabe.com. Contact info for my most excellent co-hosts can be found in the liner notes. The podcast logo was designed by TJ Todd, with additional development by Moses Bernabe. The theme music is by Aaron Esparza. This episode was mastered by Breakfast Puppies. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.